Competitive Hearthstone is currently in its off-season, and since there was no reason to grind the standard ladder, I decided to do something a little bit different this season. It has been months since I've dipped my toes inside the Wild format's competitive ranks. Usually when I play Wild, I like to play something that's a little bit goofy, but this season, I really wanted to challenge myself to see if I couldn't hit Legend with one of my favorite decks in the format, Miracle APM Druid. Why is this deck one of my favorite decks of all time? Simply put, I absolutely love gadgets in decks. I love the thrill of being able to pop off APM combos before the rope can finish burning. These kind of decks have the highest skill ceiling in my opinion and require the most amount of practice in order to master. And even with over 100 games with this deck, I still don't believe I can play this deck perfectly. This deck will still be playable when Murder of Castle Nathria is finally released, but even with the new cards, I believe this deck could still find a way to nudge its face in the competitive meta. This deck's power relies in its insane swing turns that are possible with Gadgets and Auctioneer. Most of the cards in your deck are 2 mana or less, which means almost every single draw that you have with Gadgetson when you start popping off with the combo is going to draw into another spell. And since we all know Druid loves cheap mana ramp, there's so many ways of being able to cheat ridiculous amounts of mana. And to prove my point, this is normal for the deck.
Why not push it? Because I don't want to chance it. But the way that my hand is looking right now, there's a kind of high likeliness for it to have failed. But now it's looking pretty good. Oh my god, another twig! Oh, this is so disgusting! Top deck scuff! This is so disgusting. I can't keep up with this, but we totally just win.
I don't know how much mana that was. I have no idea how much mana that was. I don't need to know. I don't need to know how much mana that was. I just know that I'm a druid and cards are free.
I don't think it's gonna get much better than that, dude. Of all the combos that I've done today, oh my god. The amount of mana that I had is unreal.
Almost every piece of this deck works in perfect harmony. We already know that Gadgetson can easily give you several amounts of mana crystals with all of the cheap cards that are available in the deck. But once you have Guff online, the only cards that you're really worried about are hitting Twig into Sphere to give you 10 mana. And there are times where that is just enough mana in order to give you the insane OTK that is possible in case stealing the deck is not an option. The main win condition of this deck is to use your own fatigue in order to kill your opponent. Tog Druid has been known in the past in order to swap decks with the opponent, but that's not how they actually killed them. The fatigue was something that would build up over multiple turns. But now that we have this ridiculous access to 20 mana combos, Tog into Solar Eclipse Naturalizes are a perfect way to deal ridiculous amounts of damage. And even a Renathal deck is not able to deal with this with the added HP thanks to the Legendary. And even if they do have enough HP in order to survive the combo, you could still just do the original Tog combo of being able to burn the ransom so that way they fatigue over multiple turns. And since you still have Solar Eclipses into Naturalize as possible, a deck that only has 2 cards in hand is still a victim of this possibility. Granted, they may have more ways of being able to kill you from hand, but if you're drawing from their deck, hopefully you'll be able to find some answers to the last cards that they have remaining. I started this deck from Gold 9, and at the end of my climb, I ended with a 70% win rate. The cards that I usually kept in my mulligan were Gadgetson Auctioneer and Guff every single time. Other cards that I would usually keep if it was a solar matchup were cards like Moonlit Guidance as well as Aquatic Form. I would usually just hero power in the first couple of turns because this deck doesn't care about passing its turns. But when you have Moonlit Guidance available, I usually try to play this card when I have 3 mana because hitting another biology project can quickly speeden up how fast you can pop off the combo. Aquatic Form was used for one of 2 purposes: to use on turns 5 or 6 in order to find Gadgetzan or Guff, or you can use it while Gadgetzan is on the field in order to give you a double card draw, which is why this deck is super consistent. You have so many ways of being able to play 1 card, which finds 2 cards, which can eventually find even more cards. I can't go through every single little detail with this deck, but one thing I will tell you guys is to keep track of how much fatigue damage that you can deal in different situations. If you're fighting a deck that only has 30 HP and you're running a little bit low on resources to keep yourself alive, there are actually ways to be able to deal 30 damage exact. When you're popping off the Tog combo and you have the fatigue damage ready to go, you can play Solar Eclipse into Naturalize, into another Naturalize in order to overdraw your opponent for 6 cards, and then use one of your Living Roots in order to go face. So that way, when it's your opponent's turn, they'll take that last bit of fatigue damage for exactly 30 damage. Being able to identify these kind of win conditions is extremely important to be successful with this deck, and there can be a lot of little nuances per each matchup. But that's exactly what makes this deck so great in my eyes, is that it's not just the gadget combo every single time, although Priest mains would like to tell you such. I've been able to beat rogues with 1 HP with this deck and not draw into fatigue damage. I've been able to beat quest mages that had ridiculous mulligans. I felt like I was able to beat almost every single deck with this deck. It felt like every single loss that I had was a misplay unless I was guaranteed to not win due to an aggro rogue having the absolute nuts. But if I'm being honest, aggro rogue wasn't my worst matchup. No. In fact, it's the deck that you least expect. This deck's worst matchup was Quest Paladin. And to be honest, it makes sense when you actually think about it. Quest Paladin is usually going to have a 1-drop every single turn that they're going to develop onto the field. And sadly, Tog Druid doesn't want to use its resources to kill minions unless it absolutely has to. If you don't have spells in your hand by the time that your Gadgetzan's ready to go, then you don't have any gas left in the engine. And sadly, Quest Paladin was able to beat us every single time that we encountered the archetype, which is extremely frustrating to say that a deck's weakness is actually Quest Paladin. But overall, these were the stats that I had with the deck. I really think that this deck does have a really good chance of being meta relevant. And the whole reason why I picked this up is because somebody was able to reach top 10 legend in Wild with this deck. And finally, after about 5 days of grinding, I finally made it to legend with this deck.
Tonight, a tale of his cobalt way.
If that clip made you hate Barnes, then yes, you're absolutely right. Barnes is absolutely terrible in this deck. A lot of people were telling me to switch to Witchwood Piper when I was trying out Barnes during my climb. But if I'm being honest, the main reason why I don't like Witchwood Piper is because decks that have Mutanus and Dirty Rat are immediately going to throw down this card as soon as you play Witchwood Piper. So I would rather fail with Barnes than run the risk of running the Piper in my deck. And another reason why Barnes can be effective is because sometimes he himself can be pulled by the Dirty Rat or by the Mutanus, giving you just another minion to make sure that Tog hopefully doesn't get eaten. Because if he does get destroyed some way or another, it's literally just game over. There's nothing you can do to win. And if you're a mobile player saying that I don't have what it takes in order to pop off this combo,
I have actually been able to do this on my mobile device, so it is not impossible. But overall, I do believe this is the perfect 30-card list for APM Miracle Druid. But if you're a lover of combo decks and you really want to test your APM and Hearthstone, this is the perfect deck to do it, and you can even hit Legend while doing so.